Hello friends. What you are about to see and hear in this video is a story that has been hidden by the authorities for many years. A story that can completely change the perspective of many people about what is really present on this planet Earth. Let's start with a timeline. In 1966, a violent eruption occurred near a city in Ukraine. An estimated 33,000 cubic meters of lava swallowed an entire village along with its innocent inhabitants. However, this catastrophic eruption did not come from a naturally formed volcano, but rather the result of humans trying to dominate the planet. It seems that people's great ambition has made them forget an extremely important thing, that is, they can receive retribution at any moment. Those who are lucky to survive will never forget the scene after the eruption. It was a sight that haunted them for the rest of their lives. A scene not unlike the apocalyptic scenes in science movies. Their village after the eruption that day looked exactly like the city of Pompeii that was buried by volcanic ash nearly 2,000 years ago. But in fact, the erupting hill that caused this catastrophic disaster was not a volcano, it was called spoil tips. Spoil tips is a concept for the huge piles of material created during coal mining and ore mining. And although this disaster happened nearly half a century ago, for some reason it was only recently declassified and allowed to make public information. Most researchers can only surmise that the disaster was initially kept secret so that the public wouldn't be aware of how dangerous hills like these were. Those are hills consisting of waste products removed from coal mining and ores that are now present all over the world. These usually consist of small amounts of shale, carbon sandstone, and a variety of other surplus materials, and they can sometimes add up to millions of tons. But what can make them dangerous once they're formed? And what do hills like these have to do with the story of giant industrial machines in ancient times hundreds of thousands of years ago? First, these spoil tips are solar thermal dumps, so they can self-ignite and burn slowly for years after they've been abandoned. Of the 580 spoil tips located near the village, about 114 spoil tips have molten cores, because of the fact that people have discovered chemical reactions going on inside it. Next, there is something that seems very normal. But we need to pay special attention that these spoil tips have a very similar shape to volcanoes in nature. So why do we need to pay attention to this feature of spoil tip? The answer here is, there are actually some landscapes on our planet that look like they were formed naturally, but that may not be the case. Because if analyzed a little more carefully, their appearance contains quite a lot of characteristics that are not completely natural. There are different classifications of volcanoes and one of them is a cone-shaped volcano. These are large pile volcanoes with a regular shape, similar to the piles of slag left behind by mining industries. But if hundreds of thousands of years ago, even millions of years ago, the ancient mining industry created huge piles of slag, and they fossilized, how can we really find out which are cone-shaped volcanoes, and which are the spoil tips left by ancient industries? Some upcoming images will help us answer this question. In fact, some of the hills appear to be remnants of mining work from civilizations in the distant past. And today, thanks to Google Earth and aerial photographs, we are full of opportunities to see clear examples of countless mountains and hills of various shapes. Usually, natural similar artifacts have a uniform composition and rarely exist the anomalies as we have seen in this image. This difference is most likely the result of a prehistoric industrial disaster. To illustrate this, let's take a look at some other eruption disasters, similar to the catastrophic eruption near a city we talked about in the beginning. It was on October 21, 1966, that the spoil tip tragically collapsed from a coal mine located on the upper slopes of the Welsh village of Aberfan. After the loud bangs, 144,000 cubic meters of cinder slag swooped down and destroyed everything in its path. In fact, the evidence for mining may have a history much older than our initial perception, or the knowledge we were historically taught. For example, the very fine walls of these great canyons show us that these are most likely ancient ruins of the quarry industry, rather than a natural product. Apparently the plains that appear in this image are difficult to match the results of normal erosion, which are similar to those made up of modern open-pit quarries. And even the scratch that appeared on this rock looked like a mark from some kind of oversized grinder. Today's mining technology is done by huge combined machinery systems as you can see, and the part that we call the blade will move into the center and then remove it. Large amounts of matter in a circular pattern. And if we compare these mines with the snow-covered mountains of Antarctica today, it's a striking similarity. And it's hard to explain why these mountains are known to have existed in Antarctica since before the last ice age, about 110,000 years ago. And in fact, if it were to take a similar time to the mountains of Antarctica, our present-day open-pit quarries would eventually become such incredible wonders. And for example piles of waste that, if left in this way, would form hills like this for centuries to come. In our view and also according to our habits, we will consider them to be hills formed from nature. and hills that sit like this over time can become wooded forests. Although this can be slow as they are made from hazardous waste materials. In addition, there are many aspects of mining that will produce a byproduct, which is a soft sedimentary carbonate rock. And around the world, we stop as we have found many examples of sedimentary hills, which were the products of ancient mining industries. We will analyze these features in more detail later in the video. Now let's go to a few other remarkable places in the world, which have unusual and mysterious characteristics. This image must not be unfamiliar to us, a place full of ancient hills and mountains showing signs of being cut or displaced. And most typical are the mountains on the Nazca Plateau, southern Peru. And this is in western Bolivia. Thousands of straight paths were carved into the ground, creating an astonishing sight. These lines, known as geoglyphs, were carved into the ground 3,000 years ago by indigenous peoples living near the Sajama volcano. It is unclear exactly when or why they were built. But in fact, these Sajama lines are still a mystery to most researchers. It's hard to imagine how building something of this magnitude was possible before today's modern technology. The Sajama roads cover an area of about 22,525 kilometers. They are perfect lines interwoven in an inexplicable sequence. Each straight line can have a width of 1 to 3 meters, and the longest line can be up to 20 kilometers in length. The creation of these lines without the aid of modern technology is a miracle. In fact, they seem to have been carved into the ground. Someone or some device has delaminated and wiped away the vegetation as well as the oxidized soil above, to reveal the rock below. The accuracy of these Sajama lines is remarkable. Although there are many sacred lines on the Sajama Plateau extending from 10 to 20 kilometers or more, all of them seem to maintain a remarkable degree of straightness, despite the rough terrain and obstacles. Natural object. Unfortunately, mapping for analysis of the size, shape, and position of Sajama lines does not answer many of the questions that still exist. Such as who created them, what was their purpose and what tools did they use? Answering questions like these can help us better understand another part of human history. There is a very impressive saying circulated in the archaeology world that can be roughly translated like this. Knowledge multiplying is the sadness of the church. Knowledge in this case is probably human understanding. The church may be some sort of ruling organization that is secretly dominating human development. And dear friends, after watching this video, we will probably have to review all the knowledge we have learned in school, at least subjects like history, geography, and geology. It is a truth that is less commonly known, that there are many works of antiquity that modern people today cannot repeat due to lack of technology, equipment and experts. And that shows us that there was a global civilization on this earth many thousands of years ago and possibly longer. In fact, there are some typical historical pieces that deserve our mention, such as the Babylovka bath made of granite weighing about 48 tons. Why has the existence of this masterpiece been kept secret and all information about it deliberately concealed and not made public? Or another work is Alexander Column weighing about 600 tons, 27 meters high, made of granite. It is clear that modern man cannot seem to create such a product with hand tools. Or like the Great Pyramid of Giza built from 2.3 million stone blocks, each stone weighs from 2.5 to 15 tons. It is estimated that the weight of this pyramid is up to 5,955,000 tons. And it's amazing that if we multiply the mass of the pyramid by 10 powers of 8 we get the mass of the earth. And how the ancient Egyptians built the Great Pyramid of Giza out of millions of stone blocks is still a mystery to this day. Or is more familiar to us, it's the rock formations in Peru. These are polygonal stone blocks weighing from 40 to 120 tons arranged in a straight line in 3 planes. What kind of crane was used to move heavy blocks like this? Is modern civilization just a shadow of the past, and the industrial equipment of the previous civilization has actually been destroyed and dissolved? This is an image of the Inkerman quarry taken in 1890. On it we can see a saw mark across a hill about 100 meters wide and 80 meters high. There are also large square niches right in the place of the one-story houses that we can see. Below the vertical wall, we also see small non-standard limestone fragments stacked on top of each other, forming a slope, and countless other limestone fragments falling between the saws. Or like this is the limestone mountain in Belogorsk, Crimea. We can see the shape of a giant stone wall formed by the previous process of breaking the mountain. At the base of the wall are non-standard characteristic mounds made up of limestone debris. Even more than that, we can see the image of a removed limestone mountain in the Bakhchisarai region. It seems that the former quarry has turned into a valley, and the limestone mounds beneath the walls have now become verdant oak forests. The village in this photo looks like it is lying on the bottom of an ancient quarry. The 3 mountains above do not appear to be made of nature at all. And before coming to thought-provoking images of industrial civilizations that preceded humanity, let's take a look at some pictures of actual mines around the world today, to see the most striking common features of these mines. The first we can mention is the Cheramshan nickel mine, followed by the Kennecott, Utah, USA copper mine, then to the Vistoke Ruta quarry, Bingham Canyon copper mine in Utah, USA, and finally the magnesium mine in Navarra. The distinctive shape of these mines is the ladder shape. They are made possible by the operation of a number of bucket wheel excavator systems of enormous size. They can create canyons with large steps, a large cutting wheel capable of forming perpendicular structures when viewed from above, another type of excavator that can make semicircular platforms. And now I'm going to show you mountains, mountain ranges, canyons, which are mostly uninhabited places, with images that cannot be derived from nature. The first place that we can mention is the Magnetic Mountain, Ural, Russia. And here is another mountain located on the Kola Peninsula in Antarctica. The mountains. Antarctica. The rock selected in a semicircle by a bucket wheel excavator in Antarctica, which was only discovered in 1820. Antarctica. Here even traces of the tracks of heavy equipment have been preserved. Greenland, Watkins Mountains, may have once been an extremely large-scale industrial complex. Or Gunbjorn, the highest mountain in Greenland, about 3,700 meters high with parts of the pass that have been fully exploited. This is a mountain located on an archipelago in the Arctic region, which is the northernmost part of Norway, 400 miles north of mainland Europe. These are the other mountains in Antarctica, with traces of massive engineering vehicles still clearly visible. This image may be the familiar Earth to us, Mount Kailash, Tibet, with a height of 6,638 meters. Apparently in our time, no other heavy mining equipment has ever been able to be lifted to such a height. Or below is a picture of the Goblin Valley, Utah State Park, USA. Today people call these used quarries a wonder in the U.S. National Park. And now take a deep breath and join us in the Grand Canyon, Arizona, USA. It is truly a giant artifact created by the prehistoric mining industry. A great work that millions of tourists still think is a natural wonder of the world. And here is another canyon also in Arizona, USA. We don't seem to find any traces of water erosion anywhere. This image is another location of the Grand Canyon. Which vehicle made this huge cut? Followed by the rocks of the Svalbard Islands. According to you, is it a natural structure or a man-made structure? This peak is a peak in the Green Mountain Range in Australia, viewed from many different angles. Let's try to make a comparison between the vertical wall of the Green Mountains with the marble wall that has just been quarried and has not been eroded by water and air in the Alps. This beautiful photo was taken in a canyon in the state of Utah, in the western United States. And this is the Canyon de Chelly National Monument, also in the United States. The mining was probably done here with a chainsaw. And now for the scariest part, this is probably the way deserts were created on this earth. First, let's pay attention to how the bucket wheel excavators removed rock from large areas layer by layer. In this photo are two giant bucket wheel excavators removing soil layers in the same area. Following these two giant machines are several bulldozers appearing in the lower left corner. This difference in size shows the terrible scale of the two combined machines. It turns out that there are quarries on our planet that could be the size of several countries, or an entire desert. The first example that we can mention is some territories of countries such as Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, Iran. There was almost no soil at all, as the top 100 meters of rock and soil had been removed along with all living things. What happened is hard to believe, but we have to find it with our own eyes. And this is Basira Road located on the western side of the Ust-Yurt Plateau in Kazakhstan. Can you see that the hills behind the Volkswagen are a wall formed by a bucket wheel excavator? And here's the Ust-Yurt Plateau. As far as the eye can see, the top layer of soil 100 meters thick was removed. Another impression from the Tuzber Plateau, Kazakhstan. This is Monument Valley, USA. Previously, the area of this territory was as high as the top of the stub right along the way. A seam with a height of several hundred meters has been torn down. You're seeing an Egyptian desert. The top layer has also been removed, probably by the impact of nuclear weapons. And this is an abandoned landless desert in Australia. A similar looking desert in Nigeria. In fact, it seems that the point of these deserts is that they are created rather than naturally formed. They are the result of a long process of industrial metallurgy and even more. Or is this another ancient mine? Apparently something like a bucket wheel excavator impacted this limestone mountain in Switzerland. Not stopping there, after the mined products go through the smelting stage, a large amount of waste will be sent to landfills, or piled up into waste piles. And that's how spoil tips are created, as we analyzed at the beginning of the video. In fact, these hills could be industrial waste piles. Their height is sometimes up to 300 meters. Chemical reactions take place inside them. They ignite and sometimes explode when too much pressure builds up inside. Vesuvius volcano, 1,281 meters high, Italy, may be a pile of waste from ancient industries. But it's called a volcano because it used to burn and explode. And this could be another pile of waste at Taranaki in New Zealand. Where are the frozen crystallized lava flows? The slopes are entirely composed of loose rock. We deal with the waste heaps. Now we turn to dumps that do not have a pronounced tapered shape. Here the rule is that if it is loose, layered, and you can dig with a shovel, then most likely the waste rock dump that our ancestors piled up in a hurry to live. For example, Zhangjiangxia, a gorgeous geological park in China. These colorful tourist attractions may be piles of waste dating back thousands of years. Or is it Bohol Island? Philippines is one of the famous islands on the planet, and if you don't know much about the Philippines, then you should definitely hear about the world-famous island of Bohol. It became famous thanks to the Chocolate Hills, which stretch over an area of about 50 square kilometers, in the amount of 1,268 hills of regular conical shape up to 100 meters high. What really happened on the ancient human Earth thousands of years ago or so? What civilization has existed and developed beyond our thinking? Who are they, and where do they come from? There is a theory that our moon is a man-made object. Could it be that some of the Earth's matter was used to build the moon in order to stabilize the Earth's axis of rotation? There is an ancient megalithic site found by a Russian explorer in southern Siberia. This site consists of giant rock formations with flat surfaces, having both right and sharp angles. One of these giant stones is estimated to weigh more than 3,000 tons. And as we shall see, many of them have been cut with flat, square and sharp surfaces. There were a number of strange events that happened to researchers when they arrived in this mountainous area. The first of which we can mention is that the geologist's compass works in a very different way. For some reason, their arrows deviated from the megaliths. This means that they encountered a phenomenon that could not be explained with negative geomagnetic fields. And this mysterious mountain region, most likely remnants of ancient anti-gravity technologies. Some researchers have noticed that some of the rocks appear to have been impacted by some kind of clever design. They also found a bonding material between the giant rocks, and it is worth noting here that tests to find out the composition of these materials have failed. There are also accurately constructed giant stone structures recorded all over the world. And to be able to arrange such a huge stone structure, they certainly need to use heavy industrial machines. Machines of equivalent size to be able to have enough force to move and arrange, stacking blocks of stone weighing thousands of tons as we are seeing. If we compare the Russian quarry with the mountains of Iran, it is possible that the mountains in Iran were once a collection of spoil tips of an ancient mine. In addition, if we pay attention, all over our planet there are many vertical cave holes, with amazing depths. Among these caves there are caves located at a depth of more than 1,000 meters. Kribera Cave, Caucasus region, west of Georgia is the deepest cave with a depth of up to 2,197 meters, and the only known cave on Earth deeper than 2,000 meters. According to scientists, some natural caves, if formed, will grow and create a funnel shape. However, in reality we see something very different, which is that many caves have remarkably smooth surfaces, and form a circle rather than a funnel. So is there any chance that the cave holes we are seeing are actually the remains of ancient mines? And if so, who created these ancient mines and caves? Ancient humans thousands of years ago were known to be incapable of doing such extraordinary things. Not long ago, researchers discovered a number of ancient historical sites that are partially submerged on the coast of Antalya, Turkey. In fact, at first, no one seemed to care about this supposedly ordinary historic site. At first glance it is uninteresting as it just looks like the remains of a typical medieval construction. It is a ruin consisting of a number of walls made up of a mixture of stones mixed together by some kind of mortar. But after closer examination, the researchers realized that it was not just stones mixed with mortar, but also consisted of another type of material that people called it mountain bombs. Fire. In fact, when a volcano is active, it not only spews lava and volcanic gas, but it also spews materials that people associate them with a phrase called volcanic bombs. These volcanic bombs can range in size from 7 centimeters to more than 6 meters and can be found up to 600 meters from the crater, with the very irregular shapes you see in the video. But if the mortar stones are covered with volcanic bombs, what makes us think? The answer lies in this: After researchers carefully examined geological maps, they could not find any trace of active volcanoes in the area. Therefore, mining and finding some extremely ancient ruins mixed in a lot of volcanic material has led researchers to conclude that, 1,000 years ago, if not millions of years, in the past, there has been a catastrophic disaster similar to that caused by industrial spoil tips. This also means that the site may have formerly been a large-scale ancient industrial mine. However, the mystery did not stop there. The researchers also found a form of material that at first looked like a type of basalt mixed in the mountain rock. But upon careful examination, they realized that these were artificially molded metal braces and were not natural at all. What's more amazing is that these metal braces are a lot stiffer than one would expect from rusted old metal bars. And finally, after they managed to get a piece of the metal for testing, the special results from the analysis showed that it was a galvanized steel with a very different chemical composition from modern steel. It seems that ancient industry has developed a better quality, harder, more durable form of metal, despite having spent a very long time affected by external conditions. And another important thing is that the researchers also discovered a lot of galvanized artifacts appear here. And it's worth noting that galvanizing is a relatively modern process that from a traditional scientific point of view was only invented in 1742, not many thousands of years ago. And amazingly, the appearance of building materials as well as volcanic forms have been determined by researchers to be thousands of years ago. Therefore, the ancient ruins on the coast of Antalya, Turkey are quite possibly the remains of a huge ancient industrial complex. Through the images we have just seen, we can imagine how terrible the production volume in the ancient past was. Come to think of it, our Earth might have looked like a giant construction site of some kind of civilization, and maybe humanity simply survives on what remains of this great construction site. Video ends here. Hello and see you in the next videos.